This is one of my favourite stories from Turkey, and it's about a man who's sometimes called Nasruddin, sometimes Nusruddin, and in Turkey known as the Hodja, which means the teacher, and he is a wise fool or a foolish wise man, depending on which particular story you're telling. And so this is the story of the Hodja and the wedding feast, and this is how I will tell it to you. When it was time for the richest man in the village to arrange the wedding feast for his daughter, one of the first things he did was to create a guest list. And of course, the person on top of the guest list was going to be the Hodja, the wisest man in the village, the teacher, the most respected man. Oh, the richest man was the wealthiest one in the village, but he knew his place. He knew the Hodja was the most respected. And so he sent out invitations, and the first invitation he sent was to the Hodja. And the Hodja got his invitation and read it and thought, oh, a wedding. How lovely to celebrate young love, the bride and the groom, and of course there is the food as well. There's keshkek. Oh, no wedding is complete without keshkek. Now, keshkek is a kind of Turkish stew that's very traditional to have at a wedding. And there'll be the pilav rice with the keshkek, and then sweetmeats. There'll be lokum, Turkish delight. There'll be baklava, and to drink fresh pomegranate juice, and then all finished off with rich, dark Turkish coffee. I can hardly wait to the wedding day, thought the Hodja. He was very keen, and so he wanted to give the acceptance of the invitation as soon as he could. So he left his house and decided to walk to the richest man in the village's house and give his acceptance of the invitation personally. As he walked, he noticed that there was a pitter-patter of rain, so he decided to speed up his walk. But the speed of his walk was matched with the force of the rain, and so by the time he reached the front door of the richest man in the village's house, the Hodja was drenched from head to foot. His turban was hanging bedraggled around his head. His coat was covered in mud and sodden. His trousers were dark with dirt. His shoes were disgusting and caked. He knocked on the door, desperate for it to be opened quickly. Knock, knock, knock. The door was opened, but instead of one of the servants, I don't know why, it was the richest man in the village himself, opening his own front door. And he looked down at this bedraggled and dirty figure of the Hodja and said, "Oh no, no. I don't know who you are, but you can go round the back of the house. People who are bedraggled and dirty like you do not belong at the front door of my house. You go round the back to the servants' entrance where you belong." And he slammed the door. The Hodja stood there, staring at the front door in disbelief. But no, the door didn't open again. There was no apology. There was nothing. Just the expectation that he would go round the back of the house to the servants' entrance. But he didn't. He went home. And he wrote an acceptance of the invitation and waited for the wedding day. It was the day of the wedding, and what a celebration it was. And in the evening came the feast. And at the feast, at the most important table, there were the bride and groom, with the groom's parents on one side, the bride's parents on the other, and sitting next to the bride's father was the most honoured of the guests, the Hodja. And the Hodja was looking resplendent in his best silk coat, trousers, the most beautiful silk turban upon his head. And the keshkek was on the table, and the pilav rice was on the table, and the pomegranate juice was on the table, and everyone was eating and celebrating, but the Hodja was simply watching. The richest man in the village turned to the Hodja and said, Are you all right? Is something wrong with the food? Please do tuck in. There's keshkek. I know you love keshkek, and this is the best keshkek. And the Hodja smiled and said, Then I will help myself. And he took his hands and buried his hands in the keshkek. And then with 2 handfuls of keshkek, he took the food and stuffed it into the pockets of his coat. The father of the bride watched. He didn't know what to say. He said, "Is everything all right, honoured Hodja?" And the Hodja said, "Oh yes, I would love some pilau rice." And so hesitantly the father of the bride handed the Hodja the pilau rice. And he took some in each hand and stuffed it inside his shirt and then rubbed. The father of the bride, the richest man in the village, was now very nervous because everybody had started to notice what was going on and people had started stopping their conversations and turning. The bride and groom were whispering to each other. And the father of the bride said, "Would you like something to drink?" And the Hodja said, "Oh yes, please. Could I have some pomegranate juice?" And so he was passed a goblet of pomegranate juice, which he poured into his turban until it ran from out of his turban down his face. The father of the bride just sat open-mouthed, but the Hodja hadn't finished. He said, "That was wonderful, but I think it's time for something sweet." And he saw the baklava, and he picked up some baklava, and he saw some lokum, some Turkish delight, and he picked up some lokum, and he rubbed it into his silk jacket. And then he saw the coffee, and he picked up the coffee jug, and from its slender spout he poured some over his trousers. The richest man in the village, the father of the bride, had had enough. "Stop!" he said. "Stop! I have had enough. I invited you to my daughter's wedding as the most honoured guest. I sat you here next to me on the high table as the most respected man in the village, and this is how you repay me for the invitation I have given you?" And the Hodja said, "I'm sorry. Did you give me an invitation?" And the richest man said, "You know I gave you an invitation. I received an acceptance from you." And the Hodja said, "Actually, yes, I did send an acceptance. And if you read my acceptance, it said, 'From the home of the Hodja, we are glad to accept.' My personal acceptance I actually brought in person to your front door. And I stood at your front door and I knocked on your front door. And you opened your front door yourself. And you saw me, and instead of inviting me into your home so that I could tell you that I had accepted the invitation to your daughter's wedding, you looked at me in my bedraggled state, with my turban hanging limply over my head, with mud all over my coat, with my shoes caked, with my trousers dirty, and you said, 'Oh no, no, you go round the back to the servants' entrance.' So I learnt that moment that it obviously was not me that you were inviting to your wedding. You invited someone from my household, or you invited something from my household, because you obviously invited my clothing, because my beautiful silk jacket, my trousers, my fine shoes and my beautiful turban, that's what you wanted sitting at this table, not me. And since you invited my jacket, my shirt, my trousers, my shoes, and my turban, that is what has had your food today." I don't know whether the richest man in the village learnt his lesson, and how the wedding feast ended, and whether the Hodja went home hungry or not. Well, he could always lick off his jacket, I suppose. But one thing I do know is that story talks to us about the nature of hospitality and just who we are inviting into our homes when we offer hospitality to people, whether we invite them or whether we invite a version of them, the clothes they wear. And so, that is my story about hospitality, and it is the Turkish story of the Hodja and the wedding feast, and that was how I have told it to you.